Hi, this is Mike Ungerman with the Central Florida Computer Society. Today we're going to talking about Unleash Your Linux, running Windows programs with crossover. So why crossover? Love Linux, but still need that one Windows program? For me, it was Quicken, which was for me my accounting program for many, many years, and which at one time would only run under Windows. The solution could be to dual boot my Linux installation so that I could run Windows and I'd have to reboot in order to run Quicken, and I'd have to have Windows with a full license, or create a virtual machine, which we've talked about in other presentations. And then in that virtual machine, I'd have to have a Windows licensed version of Windows so it could run under Linux, and then install Quicken on that. And then I'd have to switch into it each time I wanted to run it. But then I discovered Crossover. So let's take a look at Crossover, a utility created by CodeWeaver's software liberators. This is the CodeWeaver's website, www.codeweavers.com. Some of you may have heard about Crossover in the past if you have ever run a Macintosh and wanted to run Windows apps on a Mac. That was their first project, and you can see it on the left-hand side here where it says Crossover, run Windows apps on Mac and Linux. They've got several other utilities. And they say, we believe that Robinhood had the right idea. There's no such thing as a closed platform. We believe software was meant to be liberated, and we believe we are the liberator. So with that kind of attitude, let's take a look at one of their introductory videos where they explain who they are and why they do what they do.
Excited, Robin. Today we get to interview candidates to join our crossover team.
Yes, our crusade to make Windows software work on any system requires talented freedom fighters.
You mean developers, right?
Of course, of course. Freedom-loving code savants.
Does the word crossover mean anything to you?
I think it's a type of car, but I still prefer my trusty old Plymouth Barracuda.
Oh, wow, a CUDA, huh?
I was young once.
I see.
I think that's a type of Ethernet cable.
Hell yeah. It lets me run my Windows games on Mac, Linux, and Chrome OS.
Right! What do you know about wine?
It's like a master key. It opens doors.
I know it's free. It lets you run Windows software without licensing on other platforms. Yes! Stick it to the man!
Is the technology Crossover is built around that lets Windows software run like it's using native OS functionality cross-platform. It's fast.
Did anyone ask your age when you came in here?
It's what makes that dinner party worth going to. But always ask in advance.
What makes crossover better than other options, like emulators?
Crossover doesn't have the added overhead of having Windows running in the background, and it provides a consistent user experience.
To demonstrate how it is better, I will now emulate my daughter's favorite singer, twerking.
No demos. No demos.
It's all about speed, man. My games have to run at full speed. Just like my pickup lines at bar closing.
Let me put it this way. Would you like a virtual cookie or the real thing?
Oh, yeah, I'll take the real one.
I don't have patience for emulators. But I suppose you're used to moving slowly here in America and probably don't know difference.
Why would someone use crossover?
Everyone should be able to use Crossover for free. Give me a free license right now! Right now!
Open source is free. Developing Crossover is not. and requires paid professionals.
Back in MBA school, we used it to keep Word 2007 running. I loved that version.
Well, I've been using it on my Linux rig to play Overwatch.
Crossover makes Windows software accessible to everyone.
That's it, Robin. Now we just need to figure out which candidate will be joining our team. Should we set up the dartboard again?
Oh, I have a better idea. We'll let them joust to see who's worthy. Remember, young aspiring code weavers, it's a competitive world out there, but a good code weaver also knows how to give back. By supporting Crossover, you're also supporting open source. Many of our crossover patches are also released back into the Wine Project for the benefit of everyone.
Little bit of humor there. So let's let them tell us a little bit about crossover. And rather than me read this, we'll let our AI voices read this.
You are the noblest of the noble running Linux. You don't want the despair of running a Windows OS on your finely minted machine. You don't want to sell your soul for a Windows license or squander away your hard drive shekels running a virtual machine. Dual boot? I think not. But the heart wants what the heart wants. Thousands of Windows games and programs to run on your favorite Linux distro, Ubuntu, Mint, Fedora, Debian, RHL, and oh so many more. Oh, the conundrum. Crossover Linux doesn't have the old overhead of a Windows operating system or virtual machine, which means ye old Windows apps will run at native speed, play games at full FPS all while maintaining the Linux OS integration. Simply magic.
And
how to install Crossover Linux. Put that credit card away. We have a burning desire, a passion that rivals even the steamiest of soap operas. We want you to download the free trial of Crossover before spending your diligently earned dollars. Feast your eyes on our tutorial video that demonstrates the sheer simplicity of downloading our full version 2-week trial. For the adventurous souls who crave even more details, check out our tutorials and forum, where chaos reigns supreme and knowledge is shared in a tornado of expertise.
so with that kind of background, I had to try Crossover and see if I could get it to run Quicken. And I didn't want to make a commitment until I tried the free trial. And they've got a video for that too. So let's take a look at it.
Welcome everyone. In this tutorial, we're going to walk you through the process of installing Crossover on Linux. Robin, you're monitoring the chat as usual, right? Okay, Linux users can be a little more demanding than Mac and Chrome. So let's get started. So first things first, we're gonna do this demo using Ubuntu or Ubuntu or whatever you geeks want to argue about in the chat box. It's a popular version of Linux that many beginners use. So simply visit the CodeWeavers homepage and click on the Crossover link in the main menu and then choose the Linux option. Then type in your name and email and then click download. So once the download is complete, double click the deb file to open the Ubuntu software. Click on install, enter your password, and soon it'll be ready to run. And that's about it. Easy, huh? How do you think that went, Robin? Is anyone even still listening? I don't know.
So let's take a quick look now at the support resources that are available for installing and running Crossover. There's lots of ways to actually do this, including just stumbling around, downloading and install it, which is actually what I did originally. But they've got some very good support pages and some great tutorials that can walk you through it. So let's take a quick look at that. This is their support page for Linux help. And I'm going to make this a little larger. There we go. Whoops. Well, that may be too large. There we go. So you can see that aside from trying to troubleshoot some stuff that might be necessary, that we have installing Crossover Linux and literally step by step how to do it. And then once you've done that, installing a listed application in Crossover, and a lot have actually been identified, and then installing an unlisted program, one that they have not tested out, but you want to try it anyway and see if it works. And then if you decide you're not going to use it, how to remove it. And then there's all kinds of support. So launching a Windows EXE, creating a launcher for it that will appear in your graphical desktop under Linux. You've previously heard about bottles, and Crossover actually is the front end for a bottle that they create. So you don't have to worry about downloading bottles and installing bottles and configuring bottles. Crossover takes care of that for you, and then freeing up space. And registry keys if necessary, which you shouldn't have to do. And if you want multiple versions, which I guess wouldn't be really needed either. And then some distro specific issues. So I'm using Linux Mint, which is a descendant of the Debian base. And that's what's the most common that's out there, but it does support some other specific Linux distributions. And it even runs under Chrome OS, which I found interesting. And Arch Listic, which they say is unsupported, but you know, it might work for you. So here is the step-by-step installing a listed application in Crossover. We saw the video, but they do walk you through it as well. And these are the screens that you will see. And I'm actually going to do the installation of Crossover, and then we're going to put an application up. But this gives you a preview of what you will actually see. Notice that Quicken caught my attention right away. And then you choose the program that you want to install, which of course up here is already there, but you actually choose it. And once you've got that, you get the installation program. And in this case, they're installing the Steam gaming system. And here's a case where they're installing Microsoft 365, which they say is limited functionality. I did not try to install a full version of Office 365. Theoretically, it might install, and you probably won't know until you try it to see if it works, and you might want to try an earlier version of Microsoft 365. What else we got on here? Yeah, they're just pressing on and showing you some of the steps, which we will actually see when we get to it. And then they talk about how to do an unlisted application in Crossover. Looks like kind of the same steps, except now what you're doing is saying, well, where are you going to put it, and what does it have to be compatible with? And we want it to be, in this case, compatible with Windows 10 64-bit, which is the Windows that I am presently using, and switch to Linux. And again, you're not running Windows 10. What you're doing is downloading Windows components, which are free to download and actually free to run without a license. And then it's all coordinated with Crossover's software to make it run in the bottle and call the necessary applications when they're needed in order to run the program, which in my case would be Quicken. And let's see what else he's doing here. This shows you the different versions of Windows. This is going all the way back to Windows 98 and 2000 and XP and Vista and 7. So if you were trying to install an older program and couldn't get it to run under Windows 10, you could always try Windows 10 compatibility mode in 32-bit. I don't think I'd ever try to run it under Windows 8, but I might go back to Windows 7 to see if it works. And I have gone back and looked at Vista and XP. I don't think, again, I would go back to Windows 2000 unless it was something really, really old that I wanted to try and see if it would work. But this shows you some of the capabilities that are available. So having said that, we will now install Crossover, having downloaded the version of Crossover that's supported by Linux Mint, which in my case is what's called a Debian extension type file, or .deb. And that's what you would get if you filled out the trial form with your name and address and so on, or name and necessary information. And then it would offer to download this. And by the way, the only difference between trial, as long as you're in the trial, and the registered version, which you purchase, is that the 7-day trial period is over. And during those 7 days, you get the full capability of Crossover with no limitations whatsoever in its use. And they do say that anything you've installed with Crossover that is actually working and functioning that you want to keep, if you go past that 7-day, the functionality just stops until you go ahead and put in your code and password and order number and all that good stuff, in which case it just starts working up again. You don't have to redo everything, which is kind of nice. Anyway, let's take a look at the installation. Let's see if we get through it here with Zoom running, because normally I would not have Zoom running, but I'm using Zoom right now to make this recording. And let's see if the install goes. So first I'm going to switch to my file manager. Famous last words. There you are. And here is my version of Crossover, which I just refreshed today as I'm making this. And this ought to, famous last words. Let's see if this installs. It is. So that's what it had to do. We had to change the name by getting rid of that extra stuff. Okay, so it says install package. I am recording, and let's see if the package installs. What's my password? It says it's installing. The installation is successful. Now, when you install something in Linux, and if it's in a full GUI, I need to stop sharing my screen and reshare so I can go over and show you where it shows up on the menu. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And here I am again. Now I'm going to share my screen again. This time I'm going to go to my desktop on one, and everything else is the same. Share. Okay, so now we're over on screen one where I found the installation discussions on how to do it. And here's my start button. I can also press start on my keyboard, and I can see if Crossover is already here. So I'm going to start typing cross, C-R-O-S-S, and here is Crossover. It will show me that there are some other versions uninstalled, but at the moment, this is the program I want because it's been installed. And you don't normally get it as an icon on your desktop unless you do this and say add to desktop, which I've just done. And then I can also, if I wish, add it to my panel, which would put it down here, making it easier for me to start. So again, I'm going to hit my start menu, I'm going to type crossover or cross. Okay, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to say add to panel. And there it is sitting down here. And let's start it and see what it looks like. And if you recall what we had previously, let me get these things out of the way. What we had previously in when we looked at the website, it said, here's how you install a Windows application. And they do show you that it is got Quicken Classic as one of the choices. So I'm going to stop my recording at this point, and when we rejoin, we'll do the process of installing Quicken Classic. Okay, so I'm back. Let's go ahead and share my screen again. And we've installed Crossover. We've placed an icon for it on the panel and desktop. I've opened it up for the first time and verified that it's showing me the display we saw together on the Crossover website. And let's review a few of the options of the program and look and see the Windows programs that we can install using Crossover with a high degree of compatibility. Okay, so I'm going to make this full screen. Okay, easier to read. So it's just prompting me here for some of the things I might do. There's my Quicken Classic that I wanted to do. Let's take a look at the options. So we don't have any file. We don't have any bottles at the moment. I could create a new bottle, and you've already heard about bottles, but I'm not going to create that. I'm going to let the installation of Quicken do it, but I could manually do it if I wanted to. Let's see what it says about the bottles. Settings and backend. I guess I could choose a particular graphics backend if I want, but I'm just going to leave automatic on there. This will actually have me run a program that's not yet on my menu. We can get help. That's nice. We can get information, and this will tell us what's there. Unlock crossover. Okay, so this is what I can do right now if I wish, because I do still have my license. But if you're just on the 7-day program, you don't need to do this at the moment. And for me to demonstrate it to you, I don't need to unlock it because I have the full capabilities. So I do have that available to me when I'm ready for it. So that's how I would do that. Okay, cancel. Let's see what we have here for preferences. Automatically download new installation recipes. So a recipe is how they keep track of what Microsoft Windows files, DLLs, etc., drivers are necessary in order to run a program with full compatibility and do it automatically. So yeah, I want to do that. Periodically check for crossover updates, sure. Ratings I don't particularly care about, and I probably won't be doing that. Select the default bottle location. That might be important in terms of where I want it to go if it's not done automatically. So let's see where it wants me to put these things just for kicks. So where is it going to put it? By default, it's going to put it in my home folder, which I'm not sure that's where I would want it because home is where all my data goes. I might rather want it to be in my system location. So between now and the time I do the program, I'll use some AI and I'm going to ask it, where do you recommend that I put my default bottle location? And we'll discuss that once we come back to the actual installation. What else can I do here? So let's cancel that. At the moment, it's going to put it into a .cx office folder in my home folder, which in Windows it would be like on your C drive, but Linux divides folders up into root, which would be a backslash, and then all of the system files go into root normally. And I've got to make sure I've got enough room there. And then here's home, and that's got where they've got where my documents, downloads, and so on. And I'm not sure that's where I would like to have that be, but we'll come back. We'll figure out where that's going to be. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now. And let's see, where else have we got? Include entries for untested and known not to work software. So if you truly want to put something on your computer and have everything working for you, especially if it's not something that they know works, then they may have already looked at some other things that are required, but not yet tested it themselves. So your option, I'm going to leave this right where it is just to see. And then install recommended Linux packages. So there may be Linux packages that are needed for a particular routine that Crossover is going to need in order to run Windows, especially if it's in Wine. So that I'm going to leave checked. No download installers saved locally. So that also means I have not put a Quicken download installer package on here. And I'm going to have to do that too. And use default Windows decorations. Well, requires restart. So I guess I'm thinking restart of Crossover, maybe restart of the computer. So while I'm recording, I'm not going to do that. And we'll see what this actually comes up without having that chosen. So let's go on and let's see. First of all, I'm just going to, let's see what it says install. No, I have to search for it. So let's search for Quicken because Quicken. Okay. I am presently running Quicken Classic, which is the latest version of Quicken. It's also one that you subscribe to. You can see that there are previous versions of Quicken. Runs great 2019. And I think that's before they went to the subscription version. So maybe you're just using Quicken to keep track of things and you don't need to download and then have the version that runs with a bank and you don't want to pay anything, but you've still got your old installation software. So it looks like going back, Quicken 2018, it says runs well. And then 2019 runs great. So I'm assuming great is better than well. Okay. Quicken Classic, that's what I've got now, and that's what I'm going to install. Runs well. And let's click on that. So it's going to tell me I need to provide the installer file in order to install Quicken Classic. It'll install Quicken Classic into a new Windows 7. That's interesting. 64-bit bottle named Quicken Classic. So apparently this has got to run Windows 7 64-bit, but without a license, and it's not the full version of Windows. And then it's going to put additional dependencies in. So this is what I would do, but it looks like I'm going to have to get the installer file. So if I say edit, it's going to, yeah, please choose an installer file where it's located. So I'm going to stop this recording. I'm going to go online to Quicken and I'm going to get the latest installer file and put it on this computer. And then I will come back and continue the installation and we'll see where we go from here. Okay, I am back after doing some research and it's time to configure Crossover for the most efficient use. So I've consulted Gemini as to where the Crossover file should be located. Let's take a look at what Gemini said to me. Of course, I've got to find it again. So I asked Gemini, I'm installing crossover for Linux on a Linux Mint computer. The default location for their program's location is /home and then my name, and then a folder called .cx office. And then I say my root partition / has the most space. My home partition, home, only has half the space. Which should I choose to host the crossover? And as expected, they said I should choose the root partition to host the crossover files. They say where the default location for the bottles is home and then my name and CFX office, they suggest that I change it. And they suggested that I change it to a new folder directly on my root partition, such as OPT, which is where the bottles are the binaries are going to be for the program itself. Think exe files for Windows, and then crossover data. So if I bring up my file manager, I can show you where that is. So we will go to home, and then we will go further back to the computer itself. And then here is my root folder on the first partition of the drive. You can see where home would have been. And OPT, I guess operating or optional or whatever. And here is where the binaries for CF for crossover would be stored. And then here is the folder that I created called crossover data. In order to do that, I found that I couldn't just use the make directory command here in my file manager because of permissions. So in one of the rare times that I use terminal commands, I will bring up my terminal if I can get to it. Here we go. And I will bring that over. And essentially, and can I make this larger? Let's see here. View. Zoom in. There we go. That's probably better. So those of you that use MS-DOS commands or are familiar with Linux commands, I changed to the root. I still don't have administrator permission yet. So then I wanted to change to the OPT folder, which is below the root. And that is right here. There's OPT. And then I use the command in Windows, it would be dir. In Linux, it's ls for list. And it says, give me everything. And it shows me here's what's in my root folder. And I said, okay, I would like to make a directory called crossover data. And in order to do that, I need to use a command that gives me administrator permissions to make this directory. That's called sudo. So I said sudo make directory crossover and -data, and it created it for me, and it's sitting in the OPT folder when it did it. So here's the crossover data file. So a little bit of terminal commands, which is not our subject for today, but at least that's how I had to get if I wanted to change the location and not take the default. And then I took a look to see how much, what, if anything, was there, and there's nothing there at the moment. So I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to close that, and I will put this guy off the screen, and I will go back to our program. I don't know why I got two of them. Let's see why we got, oh yes, okay. So we're in the middle of using Quicken Classic and getting it set up. So I have, in fact, set the default bottle. I actually created the folder. I didn't set it. So what I had to do is come here under the menu, bottles, and settings. We didn't do that, did we? Okay. Yeah, oh, we did it here in the crossover preferences. Okay. bottle location. So we did that, and here's where I said select, and you can see that I selected crossover data now. Okay, and I selected it. So that's done. All right, now it says you need to provide the installer file. So I went to Quicken online. I'm got a registered user. I went to their support and I said, download the latest version. And I put it in my Windows downloads because it's a Windows folder. So I have to say where it is. So it's in home, it's in downloads, and it's in Windows downloads. And it is, let's put this all the way up here at the top. And let's see, we got, there it is, Quicken EXE, and there's the time. You see now, I'm working late tonight. Okay, or early for many people. So there is my Windows installation program. Got it. Okay, choose the installer. Okay, so now all things are met to do the install. Now we find out if I can actually do the installation with Zoom running and recording what we're doing. So let's see what happens. Install. Crossover needs to install several Linux packages in order to run Windows. Proceed with the installation. Yes. Wants my file. Password. Tells me I'm installing. We got package installations coming in. If I really want to see everything that's going on, there's all the stuff that's going on. And I haven't the slightest idea what all that is. But if you want to see everything it's doing, you can see it. So I'm just going to get rid of the details and we'll watch the crawling bug. And it's also giving me a progress up here on top. And it says it's preparing the system for the application. So I'm going to pause the recording and come back as soon as this portion is finished. Okay, I'm back on the recording and I got an error. It told me that I could not read and write data into the new folder that I had created called crossover.data. And apparently that's because I made it using the terminal with root permissions, but the installation did not have root permissions to run. And so what I had to do, first of all, is using my file manager, I had to go into the OPT folder, find the crossover data, and do this as root and give it elevated permission. And then you can see here what the properties are. And what I had to do is go to permissions. It's owned by root and it allows it to create and delete files. And I set it to Mike. And then the same thing for root. I set it so it create and delete files. Then I gave it access for Mike and the same thing, allowed it to create and delete files. And then I gave it as all permissions, create and delete files. So I know people who are real Linux aficionados at this point are probably shuddering at all the permissions I gave it. But hey, I want this program to run and I don't want to have any problems. And I don't want to have to put additional permissions into the program itself. So I made that folder basically unlimited access by anything that I let on the computer. And then once I did that, which I will close these. Let's see if there's anything here, just for kicks. Yeah, Quicken Classics there. Interesting. And there it is. Okay. And then I got crossover complete. Thank you for installing. Buy now, register, try now, and then exit. So, and it's you've got the right to use this and whatever. And the important thing is that the folks at Crossover have said during this trial period that you're not going to lose anything if you decide to depend upon this. So even though I've got a registration code, I'm just going to say try now. Try now. Okay. So now what's it doing? It wants to update Microsoft Net Framework. So I read and accept the terms, and I'm not going to send information to Microsoft. So now it's going to go get Net Framework. And if this is going to take a while, once again, I will suspend the recording and come back to it. And it does look like it's going to take a while, so we will stop recording and come back. And we are back. That framework is complete. So I'm going to exit that. And we are still installing. And now apparently it has some fonts that are required for Quicken that don't come with Linux. So we accept the terms. And those fonts are installing. It's still installing. Oh, putting in TrueType fonts. Net Framework 4. And so we're getting the next version. Software supplemental. Read and accept. Don't do the setup thing. And install. And verified and installing Network 4. Okay, we will pause and come back. The Net Framework the second time finished installing. Crossover is still doing it, installing TrueType fonts again. Arial, Times New Roman. Bunches of interesting. I hope that these actually, if they're being installed, are available to other programs, which would be kind of nice. Or it may just be available to Quicken. Okay, so what's it doing now? Edge WebView 2 runtime. Okay. I have Edge installed for Linux. So it may well be that what Quicken is doing is calling routines for Edge to do some of its web activities. And here we go. Let's see. Oh, that was a different one. Okay, so now it's WebView 2 runtime. 30 seconds remaining, so we'll stick with it. Nobody said this was going to be simple. It's zip, zip. I mean, there are instructions. And as you've seen, I had to do some Gemini research and some terminal research. And those of you who are proficient in the terminal and the Linux commands would probably have known right away what commands I needed to do. It looks like it's still doing that. Okay. Okay, that's done. Install is still running. Now it's doing an update on Net Framework 4.8. So we are getting a whole bunch of updates. Let's bring that over here just so you can see it. Let's see what it's saying now. Setup may not run properly because Windows Module Installer service is not available on this computer. Well, we will find out. Saying it's blocked. Interesting. I don't see any way not to do it. So we'll continue. Now, what's it saying? Supplemental license, read and agree, install. And once again, we are in installation, so we'll come back. All right, we got our net framework in, and now it wants to bring in Microsoft Visual C++ runtime. Read and agree, and install. That was fast, thankfully. Finish. Now, what are we doing? Now we're installing Quicken Classic. How about that? Okay. Quicken install. Interesting that the fonts on this are not showing. Let's see if I make this any bigger. If I can open this up, make it bigger. No, I am. So we have some font incompatibilities in the installation, but we're here. Okay, next. Ready to install. Now, keep in mind, this is a Windows program. So Crossover has already made the linkages of the folders that I have in the root of my Linux computer to what would normally be C: program files. And I'm not going to browse. I'm just going to leave it right there. And it's going to go to where Windows would normally put it, but Crossover is going to take care of the linkage. So we're going to say install. It can take several minutes. How about that? So since it can take several minutes, well, that's pretty fast. Okay. Downloading updates. So Quicken's now downloading updates from the Quicken website. That's good. That tells us that Crossover is handling the web connects. And let's see what we got. You're ready to start. I'm not going to launch Quicken directly. I want to launch it from the Crossover menu. So I'm going to uncheck that. Done. Okay. So all of this is done. I don't need these preferences anymore. But it says it's still installing. So we are going to wait until it finishes the install without jumping. Refreshing association, refreshing menus. Aha! Now we have an icon. And we are in the Quicken Classic menu. And here's our bottle. So just for kicks, let's go back and click Home on Crossover. Yep, there it is. And then here's Quicken Classic that it shows. And we've got the run command. We could open the C drive and see where it's located. Advanced graphics, panels, bottles, details. So I'm going to make this smaller. And I'm going to escape from my Crossover program for the moment, or my presentation, which we'll come back to. And I'm going to minimize that. And I'm going to minimize my browser. And now I'm looking at my second desktop. I don't need to look at this anymore. So assume this is my basic desktop. Let's see if I can drag and drop this onto the desktop. Aha. Nope. I thought I could do that. Okay. Let's see what if I right click, run with options, hide from home. I thought I could put that. Nope, it's not going to let me do it. All right. I know there's a way because previously I did Quicken on my desktop. So that will be something that I research afterwards. So normally to make this work, I would have, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop sharing and go to my main menu and see if everything's there. So hang on while I stop sharing. You get to look at me for a second. I'm going to reshare and I'm going to go over to my first desktop and share it. Okay, so now we're over here on the desktop. Let's see if Quicken's in my start menu. So let's see, Quick. Aha, it got installed. There's Quicken. If I right click and say add to the desktop, there we go. And not only that, but it looks like my installation did it anyway. So if I put this over on my second desktop, no, it doesn't want to do that, but at least I have it. So I've got it both ways. So the installation process handled the Quicken install, which would normally put an icon on a Windows desktop. And what do we also have? Oh, I have Quicken Simplify. That's another solution for another presentation. Okay, let's see if it works. Proof is in the pudding. Okay, double click. Let me get this off the main screen. And we're here on the left one of the screen, and we're going to start Quicken. Unable to find the bottle. So that's interesting. It's trying to find it in Home Mic CF Office, which is where the original installation was, even though I changed it on the install. That's interesting. Okay, so I'm going to have to either reinstall it, or I'm going to have to, have to go back to bottle details. Let's see. And so I have returned. Warts and all, as Judy likes to say. Our presentations may include warts and all, and that's exactly what happened with my installation of Crossover when I changed the default location of my Crossover files as recommended by Gemini AI. Using Gemini to assist me with troubleshooting that situation resulted in a whole bunch of recommended configuration changes, and I just didn't want to make them for this presentation, as you, the general user, wouldn't want to do that either. And so I uninstalled Crossover, went through the default installation of Crossover and Quicken, and let's see what happens now. Okay, the proof is in the pudding. We're back after I uninstalled Quicken and Crossover, rebooted, and went through the same procedure to install Crossover and Quicken again, but this time taking all the recommended defaults for the location of my files. The installation is now complete. Let's see if it works this time. So I'm now sharing my first screen. You can see we now have our Quicken icon that has been automatically placed on the desktop. And we are now going to try to start the program, and hopefully it's going to be functional. Here we go. At least there's no error message. I know you're all holding your breath. So am I. Sorry for the dead air time. So I am going to pause the recording and come back after the screen finishes rendering. So the screen timed out. I did what's called a force quit, and I restarted Quicken again. And before I got this particular screen, it asked me if I wanted Quicken to be the default program for managing any data which was downloaded from my financial sites, and I chose yes. And so now I can open a data file on my computer, and I've got a backup of my previous Quicken. So this is what I would probably choose. But for purposes of demonstration and to see if the program's truly working, let's start with a new data file. Probably want me to log in, but let's see what it says. Get started. Create a new, yeah, you can see all these other things, and it's sitting in Quicken. So I am going to say APCUG. And yes, it wants me to sign in. So I'm going to stop the recording again and go get the sign in, and then we will proceed from there. Okay, I've gone through the process of logging into my Quicken account on the web, and then come back here and entered my login and password, which I had to copy. And now they're asking me if I want to sync data between mobile and web, which I don't particularly want to do at the moment, not in this account anyway. Next. Welcome to Quicken. Add an account. Search for an and so we're up. We know it's running, and I can go ahead and set up all my accounts as I normally would from my Windows. And I could also, as I said, I have backups from from the time running Windows and running Quicken. So I could go get a backup and restore it. Let's just see here if I close that. And we say file. Yeah. View and restore backups. So I could go do that. So success, warts and all. And we are functioning with Quicken. So always nice to have a successful attempt. And one of the reasons why I chose to do a recording rather than a full live presentation is that I needed to do an installation and correct for any errors that came up. And had you been with me live doing this process, it would have taken much longer than we've done in this particular presentation. But Crossover does automate the installation of Windows programs, and we were successful. It had some bugs, but as long as I took the defaults that Crossover wanted for the location of my programs, this time I'd claim success. At least if you're switching from Windows to Linux, you have an option to run that must-have Windows program with Crossover. And so now we'll go live and attempt to answer your questions.